Hi, Julian and Kathy. This is Sarah. I just want to let you know that the link is already live and posted, just so you guys know.
Oh, so no bloopers?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, everybody. Let's see here. Looks like I'm the last guy to the party tonight, which hopefully promises to be the last edition of Charter Commission 2020.
If I remember correctly, Tom, from our very first meeting, we had decided that since you were late, you were going to be buying dinner. Now you're late for the last meeting and you still haven't bought us all dinner.
I don't remember ever acquiescing to that.
Believe
But-
the vote was 9-0 in support with one
I
member
see.
absent.
I mean, that is a democratic process, Rian. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. That situation. Maybe tonight, before we get to adjournment, we can revisit that motion. Although I don't know how everybody feels about revisiting that motion. We'll see. Let's see here. Hold on. Something just happened on my screen. And okay. All right, it's back now. And let me get the participants up. All right, we got everybody. Okay. All right. So everybody, here we are. First thing on the agenda tonight is approval of the minutes from our meeting last week. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, let's go top down. Phil,
Yes.
thank you. Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yep.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
I am Ron. I am a yes. Julian
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
All right, 1 for 1. All right, we now move on to number 2, reconsideration of motions. So 2A, residency requirement for the mayor. And Rian, is this where you are on this, or where do we want to start with this? I think this was your motion, Rian, or this was your addition to the agenda, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, the motion to reconsider both of the 7.3s was my original motion.
Yes. Okay. So then let's start. Let's start there. Rian, I don't know that we need to. Do you need to introduce the motion? I think let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay, I think we all know where this motion is. This would institute the 1-year residency requirement for the mayor before they are eligible to run for mayor. It initially passed 7-3 with myself, Ludi, and James, the original dissenters. And then at the last meeting, Hillary and Sam indicated this was preventing us from getting to an 8-2 final vote out. And so now here we are. I will say I've done a lot of soul searching over the weekend. I've talked to quite a few of you on the phone throughout last week and the weekend. And I'm not sure who, feel free to take credit when it's your turn, had made the argument that, it's in the span, if you move to Waterville in the span of 3 months, you can really get to know your ward, especially because of the geographic size of our city. But however, 3 months is not, you can't conceivably get to know all 7 wards and how they cohesively fit together inside of the city. And that is, I think, a very compelling argument. It's an argument that I can get behind. It does create a destandardization, but there's a very logical, rational explanation for that destandardization of the mayor's office representing the whole city and needing time to really understand how the city works in bits and pieces, and how that's a lot different than a ward. So I will say I am I am in support of this reconsideration, and I will be voting yes on it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so discussion, starting with Phil.
Yeah, I think the motion speaks for itself, like all the other items that we discussed and that we deliberated on and decided to move forward with. You know, that argument was valid then, it's still valid now.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Ludi.
I had said that I had issues with the fact that this isn't standardized across the board, and that's where I was coming into the meeting tonight. So I didn't think I would need to make my case again on that, because as Ron always says, if it's not broken, why fix it? So I was looking forward to hearing the case for why it's broken, but my mind is open. And what Rian said does make sense. It is impossible to learn the needs of the city within 3 months. So I'm leaning towards being in favor, but I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, so I agree. I had voted in favor of this the last time. I do think that it does make sense in this case that we could have a different residency requirement for mayor as opposed to the other school board and charter, just because they're representing the entire city. So I would be voting in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Rian, Rian, I know you've already spoken on this, but please feel free to.
No, I've got nothing to add.
Okay, Hillary.
I voted in favor of this before, and I, at this point, plan to vote in favor for it again.
James.
Thank you. Yeah, so last week when I voted against sending the package to City Council as is, and my objection was to these two 7-3 votes, because of sort of the inconsistency that they caused when you took a look at the charter as a whole. You know, any one of the changes that we made, when you look at it as a single item, you can make arguments for it, you can make arguments against it, but as a single item, you know, everything that we did made sense. However, when you put all of those items together, they don't all of a sudden, or they don't necessarily make sense together in one pot. So that was my objection to last week and this motion in particular. I do think that for the residency requirement for the mayor, having that be differentiated from the city council and from the school board, I think, and Rian articulated, I think there is a reasonable argument that that differentiation makes sense. I certainly wouldn't made the motion, and I voted against it last time, but I think that that's a reasonable argument to that makes sense as to why it can be inconsistent, but still have a good reason for it. So I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of this motion if this were the first time around, but I think that in the spirit of moving things along, I'm going to vote in favor of it. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Ron.
I spoke on this quite a bit last week. I'll try not to be redundant and give the same old spiel, but I can add some new light to it. Bill Lee did say when he was going over our packet, he saw no problems with any of the 8 items which we want to send to the public. And the other thing I want to say pertaining to that, I think he did say that the mayor is a more important position, and with compared to the city council, and we're probably comparing apples to oranges here. Also, seeing this was brought up at a public meeting in January, again, we opened Pandora's box. People knew by the paper the next day that this was one of the articles which we were going to pursue when we had our charter meetings. And I have talked, because of that, it has been some common dialogue with my constituents in Ward 7. Since it has been discussed, I fully believe that this is something that should be part of our packet. I don't think I should make the decision. I think they should make a decision as part of the eight things that we do. I think Julian said last week too, that I'm not sure that any conflict with the school board really is not pertaining to this. Final thing I'll say, I lived on Vinyl Haven for 32 years as a public employee, as a school teacher. And it took the people of Vinyl Haven 10 years to accept me as one of them. So I don't think that 3 months, any position that you're running for is enough to be able to run. And that's all I have to say for this, Tom.
Thank you, Ron. I support the motion. Julian?
I don't have too much to add to this. It seems a bit on the charter, off the charter, back on, and the very concerns mentioned last week that it doesn't all fit in, it doesn't match, et cetera, has done a complete 360 again this week. We have many votes that have been taken before us, and I think it could lead to a slippery slope of reopening the whole charter. So I'm going to abstain from this vote, and I'm not going to vote twice on the same vote and issue, so I'm an abstention. Thank you.
Kathy?
Well, Tom, I totally agree with what Ron said, and I can speak of personal experience. Living in a ward just for a few months is not enough. But I know we're not talking about counselors, but I just wanted to chime in with what Ron was discussing. He was right on the money with that. Even a year living in a ward can prove challenging. So I'm not sure why we're discussing this again. So I'm going with Julian and abstaining from this.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. All right, let's take a vote. Phil?
Yes.
Ludi?
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes.
Rian?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Ron? I am a yes. Julian? I just think we have to get you to actually physically say that you're
Abstaining. Thank you.
Okay, and Kathy, do you abstain?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 8-0 with 2 abstentions. And now we move to 2B, term limits for counselors. Rian, this was I believe this is also your motion if you want to introduce it.
Yes. Okay. So this would institute three-year term limits on counselors and prohibit them from running for a period of 1 3-year term after. This vote was also 7-3. And this was also brought up last week as after that initial vote to send everything to the council. When that went 5-5, this was listed as, the second reason that was preventing us from getting to 8-2. So, going back to what James said about how you can vote for something in the moment and then realize in the whole package it's wrong. When we first started our first couple of meetings, we actually started with voting everything that we were doing in one section. We voted to do the same thing in the other section. So if we brought something up for the mayor, we were also doing it for the council and for the school board. But then when we switched to moving through article by article, we stopped doing that section, all 3 sections at a time, and we started going through, article by article. So term limits for the mayor failed. And then term limits for the council obviously passed. And then we never considered term limits for the school board. It is something that Bill Lee did bring up in one of his emails to us, was making sure that we had intended to only do it for the council and not the school board. And having talked to residents here in my ward and also talking to school board members, I know that the school board is very much against having these term limits. I am quite concerned that if we did pass term limits for the school board, that they would campaign against the charter. And so then we get into the issue of the standardization. And while with the previous motion, we can make an argument for kind of the logistics behind why it's okay that we've done something for the mayor that we're not doing for the other two. The center does not really hold with this in terms of the destandardization. You could argue that it's okay that we do something different for the council and the school board than we do the mayor, but we do not have this for the school board. And so, you know, looking at the whole package, it's not really something I can support. You know, and I will say there are some votes that I did vote against. You know, I voted against the 2/3 budget. The council needs 2/3 to pass a budget. You know, I voted against that at the time. But then as we moved through that article and as we moved through the later articles, things that I had concerns about, you know, had been, I guess, addressed or mitigated by other votes that we took. And so if we were reconsidering that vote, it would have my support. And so kind of looking at this whole package, this is just, I mean, it didn't have my support from the beginning, and looking at it whole package, it still definitely doesn't have my support. But I would encourage the people who are in support of these term limits to kind of explain why it's okay that we have chosen, you know, is there any argument to be made about why this destandardization is okay? And I guess that's really what I'm looking for. But as of now, I'm opposed to the motion.
Thank you, Rian. Discussion top down, Phil.
All right, like I mentioned with the last item, it made sense when we voted for it before. It still makes sense now. I don't know why all of a sudden we're deciding to want to, you know, even rediscuss this item, but it's okay. We can do that. The residency requirement, the residency requirement argument that Rian made is the same argument. It's also valid for this one. You know, for one of the first reason is because, as we discussed when we're going through this particular item, the council holds more power, substantially more power than the mayor, right? And making sure that that power is not basically held indefinitely by a council member, you know, while in office, whereas the mayor, as we discussed more or less before, was more of an honorary position, you know, that doesn't really wield that much power. And that's why we decided as a group, with 7 who voted for, at least at that time, this is the group, you know, to curtail that power to 9 years, right, for a council member, which I think is a pretty substantial amount of time, and will give that council enough time to serve, and also open up the you know, the way for any potential new candidate. You know, with term limit in place, you know, councilors would be more responsible towards their constituents, because after their term is over, they become constituents again themselves, and they will have to live under the rules that they have created or voted for while they were in office. You know, members of the council will have a little less time in office to develop affinities to certain type of lobbyists and all the special interest group. So therefore, it will undermine the threat of lobbying, be a primary influence in councilors sometimes making decisions. You know, it's been a consensus among many that when given power, you know, eventually the power will corrupt, you know, the individual. If city council term limits are in place, the power will be limited. You know, candidates will be more likely to run for the purpose of serving constituents. and they would have to leave office, hopefully before the corruption dominates their decision because they've been there too long and became disenfranchised from constituents. The city council right now also is heavily entrenched in partisan politics. And we all know how that goes sometimes with the gridlocks when trying to vote on items for a city, where sometimes voting blocks are just votes that are made based on party affiliation. And that sometimes, can be a big impediment to our constituents. So if the need for re-election after 3 terms is not there anymore, then hopefully at that particular junction, which we have seen usually by the end of a councilor term, I mean, the decision that they make most often, are a decision that are not based on partisan politics, don't have often, sometimes, especially if the councilor is going away for good, don't have any bearing on them being re-elected to continue to hold that power. Sometimes money and recognition can also be a factor, in winning an election. Incumbents, have the benefits and the profit and relationship that they made while they're in office, plus the backing of often their party and the contribution that can come from relationship that they have made while they're in office, all that to help them get reelected. But sometimes those incumbents are not the best person for the job, and they sometimes could become far removed from the reality of the people in the street because they have been in power for so long and the power has corrupted them. So a newcomer could have a better understanding of the problem facing constituents, and often is highly unlikely that they will get elected over an incumbent. And term limits will help eliminate so that's sometimes a shady relationship between members of council and some special interest group, and also therefore will kind of reduce the gap between candidates, making it more manageable for a newcomer to be able to actually feel encouraged to even run, because they don't believe that they can't have an impact in the election because the incumbent has all the relationships that are needed for them to be reelected. And sometimes maybe that newcomer is the more qualified, and because the power has been wielded by that counselor for so long, the newcomer become overshadowed. And also sometimes with council, some decisions are made on basis on political favor. And the willingness to people who get special consideration for special items, in exchange for support in future elections. So therefore, the people who become career politicians by being in office for so long, have formed some self-serving relationship that can take advantage of the power they grew during the time in office if they stay there for too long. Term limits will work to stop that cycle of political reward and potential power abuse, resulting in fair and informed decision and decision-making process. So all of those arguments are there, for us, and those are the arguments that we made when we voted to pass this item. And I think that those arguments are valid and the perfect justification for us to say, based on the fact that the mayor is an honorary position and the council really, really holds a tremendous power over our city, we want to make sure that, over time, that power is not abused and it creates a fair environment for any newcomers that could be bringing bright new ideas to help us move forward. So I'm urging us to continue with this this particular item and send it to the voters as part of our package. Thanks.
All right, it was me on mute there. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you, Phil. Ludi.
Thank you. So I know that everyone knows that one of the things that I campaigned on was term limits. I introduced them for the mayor, and when I did, several of you gave lots of compelling arguments against them for local races that I hadn't considered. So I still support term limits for higher levels of government, but I also did what every good elected official does or should do, and I changed my mind when presented with more evidence. I talked with residents and I solicited feedback, and some of your talking points were that it's already tough enough to get candidates to run at the local level, which is a recurring theme we've discussed on charter over these last few months, as we know. And you also brought up that it's not an issue that has come up. So to borrow from Ron again, if it's not broken right now, why fix it? And I think it might have been Phil who actually said this then, that we would be denying people the opportunity to have their local representation because you're actually disenfranchising people in that way and taking the choice away from them. You're keeping them from voting for somebody who they might actually want to represent them. And in addition to all your talking points, I've actually been interning with Pam Trinward in Congresswoman Pingree's Waterville office. And I asked her for her thoughts as a school board member. And Pam explained to me that it takes a few terms to really understand the school budget. And we wouldn't want someone to leave just as they're learning the ropes. So I know that we're discussing term limits of city council, but I think that rings even more true for them. Given that the school board only has to wrap their heads around one budget, I can imagine that the city budget also requires deep understanding and attention to detail. And those skills and that wisdom really come with experience. So I know that I came into Charter Commission as a staunch supporter of term limits with a lot of similar ideas to what Phil just said. And I am the one who put them forward for the mayor. But when I did put that motion forward, many of you gave lots of those compelling reasons for why term limits at the local level just don't make sense. And they were convincing. So when the time came to assess them for city council, I recalled them and all what you said about how term limits can be detrimental in local government, especially in Waterville. So it's actually props to you all. You did a great job and you convinced me then, but you did not unconvince me when you introduced them for council. And I'm still not convinced of the merits of destandardization and how Phil's arguments only ring true for the council, but somehow not for the school board. And I've also spoken with more residents and community leaders since then. So as I said, when I was presented with more evidence, I changed my mind, as every good elected official should. So I'm still not in favor of term limits for council.
Thank you, Ludi. Samantha.
Yeah, thank you, Ludi, for that. I am also just wondering why term limits would be appropriate for the council and not the school board. I would echo Ludi's thoughts on the school budget. And I think that it reigns very true for the municipal budget as well. That it might take a couple terms to really get a great handle on that, at least one full term. And I think that it's important that we allow people to continue to run as long as they're willing to serve and they can be elected out of office. I would also kind of point that the whole idea of people only being party lines and only voting party lines, I don't necessarily think that that's always true. However, when they run, it is very clear what party they are in and they are elected that way. So their constituents are electing them because they represent that party and those ideals, and they are ideals that align with their constituents as well. So I don't think that it's necessarily the best argument to say we can't continue to that we need term limits because of party politics. So I just don't really agree with that part as well. But other than that, I'm not in support of having term limits for the council if that's the only term limits that we're going to put forth.
Thank you, Samantha. Rian.
I just want to, I don't need to repeat any of the talking points that I just made, but I do just want to say, you know, the last vote with the two abstentions, you know, because of reconsideration, these are not the first two votes we have reconsidered. They're not the first two votes in which people have changed their minds. We have voted down some things. In particular, we voted to remove the unnecessary language, or to clarify, I should say, in the mayor's section, that if there is a recall, that vacancy does not need to be declared by 2/3 of members of the council. But that same clarifying motion, when it was brought for the council, was voted down. However, in our last final week, sometime in June, I didn't go back and look it up right now. I introduced a motion that would standardize those things and standardize all three of those sections with the vacancy due to a recall not needing 2/3 of members of the council or 2/3 of the school board to approve. And that reconsideration, that clarification vote, then passed 10-0. So all we are doing now, in essence, is the reverse. We're looking at the standardization. We are seeing that things are destandardized because there was no motion brought up to standardize them. We are now reconsidering the presence of just one of them inside of the charter package. So this isn't a new novel thing that we are doing. I think the timing of it might be part of the issue, as well as the fact that they were 7-3 votes. But we've been doing this reconsideration all along. You know, we reconsidered the water district when that came up. We've reconsidered voting to eliminate caucuses, and that was the exact same motion, and that one also lost a vote. On that reconsideration, someone changed their mind. So we're not unfamiliar with the concept of people looking at things in a different context or having more information, as Ludi said, and, you know, being good elected officials and changing our minds when we are presented with more evidence. So I know that the two people who abstained last time are in support of this motion, and I just really hope that they choose not to abstain this time and perhaps speak to what Samantha and I and Ludi thus far have said of what is the argument to be made about why this is okay for council and not okay for school board. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhian. Hillary.
Hi. So I want to first thank Phil for everything that he said. Phil, I think you raise a lot of really valid points, and I think a lot of your points are worth consideration. And I'm sorry, that's my dog snorting if you hear him. I feel like if we were looking at this within that context of school board and city council, that those points that Phil raised should apply to both, and that is the conversation that we're having. It is simply a matter of us changing course at some point. As Rhian had said earlier, we had initially tried to group things, and then at some point we shifted course and we went from article to article. And I'm one of the people who supported this. And I don't know that I really disagree. What I can say wholeheartedly I disagree with is an inconsistency with the application of what we're of these rules that we're outlining. The destandardization of this, there's no reasonable explanation for putting term limits on city council and not school board. And I'm sorry if school board members would be really disappointed with me, but long-serving school board members certainly bring a lot to the table, and they have a ton of experience, and I value that. But you know, that alone isn't a reason to not consider term limits. So I think there's a greater argument to be had, but that's not really what we're looking at. What we're looking at is kind of what Rhian had said. There were several amendments that had been raised more than once. One of them was mine. That was the water district. I wanted a second vote. I gathered more information. I changed my mind based on the information that I gathered, and darn it, it didn't pass the way I wanted it to. But all of you voted and gave your mind. And I'm not really looking to convince or persuade anyone to change their vote here. I'm looking to say that you were either appointed or you were elected to make a vote. And unfortunately, I feel like an abstention is essentially a tactic to basically eliminate me the opportunity to change my mind after information gathering. So I'm just going to plead with everyone here. It may not turn out the way we want it to, and if it doesn't, then we look at it and we talk about it. But doing our due diligence means we have to allow people the opportunity to grow and learn. And I have yet to hear an excellent argument for why it's reasonable for city council and not school board. So I will be switching my vote on this. I'm not asking anyone else to switch their vote, but I am asking everyone to please vote.
Thank you, Hillary. James.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, I mean, I would say, the argument, are term limits good? Are they good policy or bad policy? Ludia made a bunch of great points on that. I don't have anything to sort of expand on. I don't think that term limits would be good in this situation, but I think Hillary's correct, and that's not even necessarily the question right now. The question is, does this change in our charter make sense in the context of all the other changes? And it doesn't. I think Hillary's right that there isn't a reasonable argument that's been articulated for why it makes sense to distinguish between city councilors and school board members.
I've got a perfect argument.
There was nobody even brought it up with school board members. So with school board members, it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a bad idea. It was no idea at all. And so I just think that it doesn't make sense in the context of a whole charter. I was against it before. I'm going to be against it again. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
James, thank you. Ron.
I understand both sides. I did when we voted on it, and I still do now. I have listened to my fellow commissioners. I've reread the minutes. I've watched the videos of these articles that we do have. So I don't take my vote lightly on what I'm going to finally do. But I'm reverting back to 2 weeks ago. It was my understanding that while we was doing this, I think James brought it up. We were trying to make as many of these unanimous as possible. And I can remember saying I'd make a gentleman's agreement. If I had a 7-3, 8-2, or 9-1 on the short side, I'd be willing to change it for the sake of the charter and the sake of unity. I think we've said it many times. There's a lot of diversity here, and there has to be some give and take. And so, again, this one I'm not as strong on as I was on the 3 months for the mayor. But again, when we vote, I really cannot change. I have to go with what I stated in the first place, and getting back to what I put in the paper. Don't change for the sake of change, and when in doubt, don't change. So I'm going to have to vote the same way I did the first time we voted.
Ron, thank you very much. I'm with Ron on this one. I'm not terribly committed to this situation either way, but I don't see myself changing my vote. Julian.
Yes, it's interesting as an ex-school board member. I have some insight that the other charter members might want to consider. The goal of being uniform between a council and school board, I'm not understanding that for the reason that it is a completely separate brand of government. And that is why you can have school board members working in the school system and sitting and voting for the same budget on the council. There's many factors and things that are not in unison between the school board and the city council. To give you a few examples, if you miss a school board meeting, we don't get paid. Council does. A quorum for the school board is 4 members. For the council, it's 5. A councillor has the ability to contact the city lawyer at any opportunity they want and get an opinion. A school board member has to go through the school chair. We are not allowed to personally contact the school board lawyer. We have a separate lawyer to the city. So this continuity, the two are completely at odds with each other on so many items. So for me, that's not a factor. I believe that it's okay that they're different in that way, and they don't add up for many different reasons. I don't believe in term limits for school board members. I think there's a lot more to have to grapple with, and you're on policy committees. I do agree with them for city council. I saw a councillor sitting here in Ward 5 for 15 years, and it took a budget repeal to remove them in the end. So it's totally different brands of government. And to talk about, you know, we're revisiting this, but the people that wanted to revisit this were the dissenters in the first place on this original vote. So I hope I've addressed the reasons why the two are quite separate. Let's see. One more note here. So, you know, I mean, that's my thoughts on that. I've spoken to many residents in Ward 5 as I've had the opportunity to go and see them and let them know I'll be leaving them in November, and thank them for support. And, you know, they watch the charter meetings in my ward, and they're quite opposed to what happened with the changing of the votes. To address, you know, a charter member's former concern that we have gone back and forth, yes, we have, but those were unanimous votes that we went back and forth on. They weren't 7-3 votes, so there was no dissenters on those votes. And additionally, those votes weren't substantive political changes like the big ones that we're dealing with now. The big ones we're dealing with now are substantive changes that the voters will see in a different package. A lot of the things we went back and revisited were a lot minor. They were good housekeeping, cleaning up, and they weren't contentious. So I don't think that that really equates. And as far as criticizing me for abstaining, I'm not criticizing anyone's vote. You can abstain, you can vote yes, you can vote no. At the end of the day, I will leave this commission with my conscience intact. And if I feel abstaining is what does it, I'll damn well do it, okay? Because I'm not going to re-vote twice on votes that we had an original good deal on. So I'm happily going to abstain again. Thank you.
Wait, sorry, thank you, Kathy.
Yes, Tom. First, Phil, you had some great points there. I don't think everyone that is on this commission really understands about the council. Having somebody on the council for 15 years was just a nightmare. And I think that's why this was brought up to begin with. I am a little confused as to why we're rethrashing these to begin with. Secondly, when the question was asked about the school board chapter, at the time we were discussing school board, no discussion at all. The response was, no, they don't want to change anything. So it's a little puzzling tonight why all of a sudden we're talking about school board. Maybe if I had got a call from Rian like many others did, maybe he could have explained it to me. But I think it's important to have the term limits. As Phil said, no one, not even anyone on this commission, should hold that office more than the 9 years. In one respect, even 9 years is a lot, but so I'm still very confused why we're bringing this up again. I've also heard from my residents. I hear from them very often about many things. I will tell you, many residents, even with very healthy incomes, were disgusted that the vote was made to not allow the taxpayers to vote on the budget. People are angry about that. But I know we're not just going to go back and rehash that one. just like these two should not have been rehashed this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, voting top down. Phil, go ahead.
I'm gonna vote yes.
Ludi,
No.
Samantha,
No.
Rian,
Nope.
Hillary,
No.
James,
No.
Ron.
Yes.
I am a yes. Julian
Abstention.
and Kathy.
Yes,
The motion is 4-5 or 5-4. So either way, it doesn't pass. However you want to phrase it, it does not pass. All right, that moves us on to section 3 of the agenda, the final vote out to council. And we have some, we have a sub A that I think is dependent upon how we vote on 3 itself. And so is there anyone that would like to make a motion regarding the items that have all passed by either an 8-0, 8-2, 9-1, or 10-0, or 9-0, because I think we do have some of those. Any of those motions that have all met the 7-3 threshold. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion regarding those items?
So can we make emotions now or to?
Well, I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I think that someone would need to make a motion to basically say, okay, look, we've got all these items that we have passed either unanimously or by whatever number that we needed to pass them in order to get them to the voting stage. And I mean, and then we would need to make the motion to say, okay, look, these are the motions, these are the items that we're going to present as changes to the charter for the voters. Unless someone disagrees with me and thinks I'm wrong about that. Procedurally, I may be. It's not my strongest suit.
No, so Tom, I'll make that motion. This is James. So
Okay. Thank you, James.
I'll move to send our send our package to City Council. Our package consists of all votes that we took that were exactly as you listed, Tom. You went through the permutations. So that's my motion, and this again is to send our final package to the City Council.
Thank you, James. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we now have a motion that we can discuss. Discussion starting with Phil.
I would say, I mean, we all did great work as commission. We worked hard, and the thing that I was most proud of is that we set up our rules and we decided how we're going to vote and how we're going to send items to constituents. And I will say I was disappointed with the fact that that changed at the last minute by whichever reason people want to bring forward, because the argument that was made of inconsistency, somehow found its way not to be as valid for a certain block of people when it regards to one item compared to the other. Because, and even though the same argument of inconsistency, could be made for all the items that we revisited. And I think that all this basically started from, I believe, a misunderstanding from Mr. Lee, for our attorney not fully understanding the rules that we have set up as a commission to follow, which we decided to vote on individual items and then send the packet with an 8-2 vote. And I just have to say that, I give credit to everybody who came and worked hard, and even though we had some snafus, and hopefully we at the end, and whichever way anybody votes today, I'm sure that they will make the vote in good conscience and for the benefit of constituents. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Ludi.
Yeah. So to piggyback on Phil's disappointment, I think it's immature that we put in over 6 months of hard work, and a few stubborn members of Charter are invalidating our work, their own hard work, over perceived misconceptions about the process. 5 of us had issues with the standardizations. We brought it up and to address those questions about why we're talking about these items tonight. 7 of us voted last week to reconsider those 7-3 issues. And we've done that now, and no other issues about what we've put together as a charter change were brought up. This final vote that we're taking right now isn't about what we didn't put in, it's about our accumulation of 6 months of hard work. And if this does not pass and we go back to our voters today without sending them anything, then that's it. This has been a lot of hard work, a lot of compromise, and none of us got everything that we wanted, but we did get some essential changes in there. So this really isn't about what we didn't do. It's about what we spent 6 months, as I said, compromising on. We didn't get what we wanted. I didn't get the elimination of the mayor's position, which is what I heavily campaigned on. But even though I didn't get it, I know that this compromise package is still something I can bring back to my voters and stand behind. This package contains some really important changes that I'm proud of, like the 2/3 council vote on the budget, because it indirectly gives people more of a voice on the budget. And really my whole campaign was about more voices being heard. So I don't feel like I let my voters down. I wholeheartedly support this compromise package. I'm proud of our hard work together. And if this vote right now does not go 8-2 or higher, and the message that the minority is sending is that they will not send the package and that they'd like us all not to send anything to our voters, I'm not gonna fight it. Obviously, we're gonna be at a stalemate and we will have lost months of hard work. But if this minority feels strongly enough that this should not go to the voters, I will respect them. Like Julian, I'm gonna leave this charter commission with my conscience intact. And I enjoyed working with you all. I learned and I grew a lot, and I look forward to enjoying the rest of my summer.
Thank you very much, Ludi. Samantha.
I don't have anything else to add.
Very well said, Samantha. Rian.
I really just want to second everything Ludi said. I think that was really really well said. I do also want to just clarify one little thing about the process, and that's if you look at last week's agenda, item 5 has that final vote out to council. And 5B is if 8 or fewer commissioners vote in favor, what is preventing the dissenters from voting yes? And then we get into the consideration of issues and the revote if needed. Now, we never quite made it that far because we got a little hung up on number 4 there with the reconsideration of the non-unanimous. But the motion before that had been, by Julian to send the whole package, and that went 5-5. And then when that went 5-5, we kind of started making motions, I guess, about what would get us to 8-2. So in terms of the process, last week's agenda did have us having a vote to send the whole package, which we wound up doing. And then a conversation around what is preventing the dissenters from voting yes, which was these 2 7-3 votes. And then a reconsideration of the issues, which we did tonight. And now we're here at the revote if needed. So in kind of regardless of the way we bumbled through it last week, we did have a vote to send the whole package, and that did go 5-5. And then we came together and said, well, what's it going to take to get to 8? And, we've done this reconsideration. I feel a lot more confident about the charter as a whole package now, having discussed more those 2 issues. And so I will be supporting the whole package, and I just kind of want to echo Ludi's final point of, regardless of how this vote goes tonight, I'm just looking forward to enjoying the rest of my summer.
Thank you, Rian. Hillary.
I feel like I'm sitting here trying to process all of the information and what everyone has shared. I just want to have the opportunity to thank everyone for their hard work. And I think everyone really did put in a lot of work on this. I'm proud of our work. I'm incredibly proud of compromise all the way around. I feel badly that it seems as though we're ending on something that was super contentious, because I think generally we all agree that there was an awful lot of give and take. I think good government has to be about give and take, and I feel like we've tried very hard to do that. I think we don't have a package that represents any reflection of what one person wanted. And Kathy, my heart goes out to you because I know you spent an awful lot of time talking about people having the ability, to vote on the budget. And it didn't turn out that way. And what's great about the Charter Commission is we get to look at it, and in several more years, people can revisit it. It's sort of this living, breathing thing that people can change as it suits Waterville's needs. I'll be voting in favor of sending this on. I guess I feel like people are already speaking as though we've decided that it's not going to pass, and I haven't been convinced of that. So maybe y'all know more than what I do, but I'd like to say we've done great work. I'm proud of it, and I'm really grateful for having the opportunity to work with all of you and get to know some of you a lot better.
Hillary, thank you very much. James.
All right, thank you, Tom. So I'm definitely in support of this motion. I'm in support of sending what we voted on to the city council. If I were writing this document myself, there would have been some things in our package that I wouldn't have written, and there would have been some things that weren't in our package that I would have put in. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not necessarily in favor of everything in this package, but as a whole, I am. I'm proud of the way that we worked out the fact that we didn't have a consensus on last week's vote. And I think it's disingenuous, Phil, to say that the rules have been changed. We followed our rules exactly as how we made them. We decided at the beginning that it was going to take an 8-2 vote to move the package to city council. We had that vote. It went 5-5. So it didn't pass. We didn't make rules for what would happen if we didn't get an 8-2 vote. We didn't make rules at the beginning. We did at the last meeting. Everybody had a chance to have input on that, and everybody had a chance to vote. So I hope that doesn't become the theme tonight, because not only is it false, it just brings down the entire mood. This is potentially our last meeting, and it's definitely the culmination of 6 months of not only hard work, but also dedication of time away from family, time away from friends, time away from work. And so even though I'm, again, there's things in this total package that I'm not necessarily in agreement with, then I'm still in favor wholeheartedly of sending this package to city council. And I would strongly urge everybody else to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Ron.
Tom, just a question on the package, so I'm entirely clear. This is quite an important evening for us. We had 8 items for reconsideration on these. And it's my understanding now that it's not going to be 8, it's going to be 7. The term limits for councilors is now out. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. I believe that to be correct. If anyone thinks I am wrong or that Ron is wrong, please speak up. Otherwise, I will let Ron continue with his under the discussion.
Okay, at least I know what I'm voting on. Let me read you, because my comfort zone is not very good with the rule that it has to be nothing at all. We have to, not only us, but the voters in November, they're going to feel the same way that we do. Some of these things they like and some of them they don't. But again, we don't make the rules. It's really not a very good situation. But Samantha read part of this last week, and this was the rules we made up from minutes of a meeting. It says, after discussion, it was determined that 7-3 vote for every line item for any change or addition, and an 8-2 vote for final changes to the charter before it was set forth for both the city council and the residents vote in the November election. Julian Payne made the motion that it would be 7-3 vote for any changes or additions, and 8-2 vote for the final work completed. Now, again, we have two lawyers here this evening. You'd have to admit there's a lot of gray area here, and I'm sorry that it's going to be a gray area when I make my votes. That's it.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know if there was more there, Ron. So thank you very much for that. For my part, I want to just let everybody know that I understand why everybody on either side of the situation feels the way that they do. I think that we have spoken at length about why everybody feels the way that they do. And I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to tell you is this, is that this is and has been a much more complex situation than I thought it was going to be. And everybody here clearly cared about the outcome. That doesn't mean that we all cared about reaching the same conclusions, but I think that, you know, the fact that we had a group of very conscientious people, and I don't think anyone would dispute that, is certainly important. And I think that it speaks to the quality of the work that we did here. And whether we pass something or not today, I don't know, but I do know that I will vote in favor of this package's passage. Julian.
Yes, it's last meeting. I have an in-depth comment. In the beginning, when we voted 7-3, that was the threshold. The votes we removed tonight, the one vote, it's not just about that. The whole body of work that we came to was guided by that threshold. There were some votes that were 6-4 that did not make it on. It was said before by a previous charter member, you know, maybe we didn't understand. Also, it was also said by the same member that we do not pick and choose votes. Whether we like them or not, 7-3 is the threshold. They go. We don't decide which ones we like. The other thought that someone addressed tonight, that we were going to hash out and debate things at the end. When we voted 7-3 to dump those items on the charter as a whole, that to me was written in stone. At that point, we then decide, do we like all those items? Are we prepared to vote on all those items or not? That was not the debatable point at that point. From the very beginning, 7-3 makes it onto the charter. I campaigned on protecting the wards and the mayoral position. I was true to both. I protected the wards. I voted against having a mayor. I lost the taxpayers. I lost the partisan elections, but I never at one time voted to re-add them. The entire process at some point appears to be about blocking votes. We really haven't made too many drastic changes or headways. Turning the package over with one more vote removed really gives very little for the public to vote on. I'm not sure that it's necessarily worth it. What is deeply concerning about the process is the individuals that were the dissenters on these original votes were the same members that made the motion to revisit them. And I believe going back tonight, knocking one of them off was some kind of compromise to make me sacrifice my beliefs and thoughts on the original document. I personally accepted defeat at times in votes that I had put up, never motioned to re-put them back on. That was the end of the package, no redo. I had every intention of voting for the charter, and if it fails, it is not due to my vote tonight. I believe it purely fails because members went back on the original agreement and motioned to change that at the 11th hour. Furthermore, I've walked the ward, as I said, spoke to people. Countless people have advised me and felt that there's not enough changes to warrant that it was really a deadlock situation. And they thoroughly backed my own opinion because, you know, it is okay to question your opinion and judgment. No one's always right. And I reached out to a lot of people that I respected, and they said, if you remove that vote, do not vote for it. And I agree with them. So, and you know, the whole Charter Commission, to address some concerns tonight, my last thought, you don't necessarily have to turn it over to the public. You do 6 months of work, maybe you agree that the last charter members really had a good thing. There wasn't that many changes. Just because you do 6 months of work and looking at something, people debate that all the time. They have committees and organizations. You have, you know, process improvement in organizations. And at the end of the day, a lot of people say this is working quite well. As people have said, we've all worked together. We've learned a lot about each other. It's been a growing experience, whether this passes or not. And there's a lot of good ground for the next charter to scroll through and look at votes that didn't pass and why, and all the rest of it. So again, I'll leave with my conscience. If there's any way around it, they can always motion to throw that remove vote on, and I would happily vote for it. But above all, I'll leave with my principles. And, you know, just to address another charter member, and there has been a lot of attacks on this, to refer to people who might not vote for the charter as immature and stubborn members from someone who's probably 20 years old is just an insult. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Kathy?
Tom, I have to agree with what Phil said. It has been very apparent that the rules in the game changed midstream, going against everything that we had decided at the beginning, forming the commission in December and then into January. And this vote that happened tonight about taking away the term limit on a counselor. I don't think everyone here understands that. Just like many of us campaigned to be on this charter, we understood it was time away from work, family, other outside activities. So when I'm hearing this, oh, we've sacrificed all this time, well, maybe this was not something that you should have participated in. So my residents are quite disgusted with the way this has gone also. Thank you.
Kathy, I just wanted to make sure, that is that the conclusion of your discussion point?
Yes, it
Okay.
is, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, and here we go with our vote on this motion, starting with Bill.
Is that me?
Yes, sir.
I vote yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I am a yes. Julian,
No.
Kathy.
No.
All right, the motion passes 8-2. So we do have something that we will be sending to the voters. We now need to make a motion to allow Bill Lee to correct any scriveners, and that's scrivener with a V, as Bill pointed out, not with a B. I'm happy to make that motion if anyone would like to second it.
I'll second it.
I don't think there's any need for discussion on this. Phil, how do you vote, sir?
Vote yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian.
Yes, and I just want to say that spell check caught it and corrected it to how it appears.
Okay. Hillary.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes, and when you're done, I'd like to speak.
Of course. I am a yes. Julian.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Ron, what did you want to add?
Yes, I probably should have brought it up before you took that vote on this being a final package, but I would like to make a motion that we take a on the original one with all 8 on here to see what it is.
Well, so in all fairness, Ron, and someone please correct me, but I believe that we did in fact take that motion. We did take that exact same vote last week. I believe that was Julian's motion. I believe it was a 5-5. I believe it was
That's
a 5-5
correct.
vote. I think that it was, I think the 5 people in support of it were me, you, Julian, Kathy, and Phil. I could be wrong about that. If someone wants to correct me, please do. If someone would like to confirm that I'm right, please do that too. Rian, is
You are
that right?
correct. You're correct.
Okay. Ron, in light of that, does that quench your thirst on that issue?
Not exactly. That was last week. I'm talking about this week. I thought we voted on what we was going to do with change the residency requirements for the mayor and the term limits. But I don't remember that we took a vote on how many people would be willing to go with leaving all 8 in for our packets.
Okay, so when we met last week, there was a vote to leave. There was a motion by Julian, Ron, that said all the 7-3 votes, which included the term limits, all the 8-2 votes, all the 9-1 votes, and all the 10-0 votes. That would be the package in sum that we submit to the voters in November. That motion was a 5-5 vote along the lines that I outlined earlier. So I do believe that we did take that exact vote.
Okay, and I know I'm repeating myself. The way the rule is, I really have kind of a bad gut feeling that, we have to take it as a packet, but if that's what the rule is, and that's what the voters have to do, I guess that is the procedure that we use.
Okay. Thank you
Yes,
for that, Ron.
Ron,
yeah,
Bill
ahead.
advised us that because we have major changes, there's no way to send individual line items to the voters. So all the voters will be getting on the ballot is a question that says, do you approve the, revised charter for the city of Waterville? Or it'll be a question very, very similar to that. And then it's just a straight up or down vote on all of our 7-3 or greater votes. Does that help?
Yes, and also I'd like to say it has been a pleasure working with all 10 of you. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I would like to have us have a group picture and go out to lunch.
Ron, you are a gentleman. Okay, so we've done that. Now we move on to a motion to have the chairs approve a final report for council. Before we make that motion, or if there is anyone that makes that motion, who's going to write that report? Is that, do the co-chairs write that? Or
Yeah, so Tom, I'll make a motion. So yeah, my motion would be to have the chairs approve the final report that gets sent to city council. And so just so people understand, so the final report is essentially a guide to what we did. It's a Cliff Notes version. It doesn't have the force of law. People aren't going to be voting, voters don't vote on anything in the final report, but it is something that's required by statute, so we have to do it. The voters will only be voting on basically all of the changes that we made. So we had talked, I think, in the past about Rian was going to prepare a draft copy of the final report, and then we would take a vote on it. But I think in light of efficiency of time, I think it makes more sense, rather than to have other meetings, to go over language in a report that really doesn't carry a whole lot of weight. I think it makes sense to have the chairs approve the final report. We'll have Rian essentially finalize the draft that he has been preparing. And then Tom, you and I would have input, and ultimately final authority. You and I would have to agree that, okay, this final report is good to send to city council. Again, this isn't the actual changes in the charter. This is just the final report. So that's my motion.
I'll second the motion. Phil, your vote.
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha, Rian,
Yes, and I also want to echo what everyone else has been saying, that it's been a good few 6 months working. And I've appreciated the challenge and the perspective on different ideas, and I'm really proud of what we just voted to send to the voters.
Thank you for that, Rhea. Thank you for those good words. Hillary.
Yes, and I want to thank both you, Tom and James, for co-chairing, and I totally trust both of you to evaluate the final report and work with Rand to make any changes necessary.
Thank you very much, Hillary. James.
I vote yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I am a yes. Julian.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, there we go. All right, that motion does pass. Now we need to discuss an effective date of dissolution of the Charter Commission. And my question on this is, do we need to give a hard and fast date, or can we just?
Yes.
We
Tom,
do.
Tom, can I talk to this
Yes,
one?
please.
This is required in state statute. I had asked to have this added to the agenda, just so everyone understands what happens next. And so from the moment, the day that council gets the final report, let's say it's the 22nd of July, we are statutorily then bound to automatically dissolve a month later. And that is, I believe, because there is the option, and Bill spoke to this last week and said that it generally never, ever, ever happens, is for council, if they have questions, can come back and ask the commission questions. And in particular for us, where we might wind up having to answer questions for them is this final report is also going to contain the directive to them that they examine the planning board and the way that things are sent to the planning board. We didn't make that change. We voted to essentially tell the council to revise the zoning ordinance. And there is a possibility they may come back to us and say, here's the zoning ordinance, tell us what you guys want to do. In which case we would have to hold another meeting to essentially approve the full recommendation to council. I don't foresee that happening. And as Bill said, it generally never happens. But that is just, we are statutorily bound to dissolve unless they come back and want us to actually do their work and tell them what to do to the zoning ordinance.
All right. So, Rian, in light of that, how much time do you think you are going to need to complete this report? Because I imagine James and I will be able to ratify it relatively quickly.
Yes, I've also asked Bill if he wouldn't mind taking a look at it as well.
I think that makes sense.
So I am going to say there's probably not enough time to get it before the council on the 14th. So I'm guessing we will be sending this to the council on the 22nd, right? It's the 22nd.
Or is it 20? Is it, or, well, hold on. If it's the 14th, then wouldn't it be the 28th? Don't they do them every 2 weeks? Or am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. It is the 28th. I don't know
So-
why I have the 22nd stuck in my head. So then it would go, and it's purely as Bill explained, going before the council is literally just a legal requirement. And then they'll just vote to call an election to approve, the new charter. And again,
I can just clarify, this is Patty. The next council meeting after tonight will be the 21st.
On the 21st.
Yeah.
that's probably why I had the 22nd in my head. Okay.
Okay. So Rian, do you think you can have it ready in time for James and I to review it and confirm it so that we can get it to them by the 21st, or no?
I would ask Patty really quick. Patty, would you need that by the 16th to get it on for the 21st?
Yes.
Shoot. Just 'cause, I mean, that's 9 days. I don't. Do we want to then shoot for, what would it be, August 4th?
Yeah, we might
Patty.
be looking at August 4th just to make sure we give ourselves enough time.
Yeah. Patty, is that the day? Is that a meeting night, August 4th?
Yes, August 4th.
Good, okay. Just so you guys know, I do not have a calendar in front of me, so if I'm screwing up with these dates, take it easy on me. But so then if that's the case, and we're shooting for August 4th, then, and we have to dissolve within a month, so then would we be voting on a dissolution date of September 4th? Rhian?
We won't vote. It's going to be a statutory, we will dissolve a month. So we would dissolve on September 4th.
So we don't need to vote to set that as a day. That's just what it would be.
Right.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So then in light of that, does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Let's vote on it. Phil.
Yes, and good night.
Yeah, Phil. All right. Ludi.
Yes, and it's been great working with all of you.
You too, Ludi. Thank you. Samantha.
Yes.
Rhian.
Yes, and Hillary just messaged and said she had to step away. So she's a default yes.
Okay. Hillary's a yes. James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes, and goodbye, folks.
Goodbye to you too, Ron. Thank you. I am a yes. Julian.
Yes.
Good night, Julian and Kathy.
Yes.
Good night, Kathy. Good night, everybody.